From the outside, Mark and Rachel Turner lived the kind of life most people envied. Their two-story colonial home sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in a leafy suburb of Fairfield, Connecticut. With its white shutters, rose bushes, and neatly trimmed lawn, the house projected everything about their life: stability, success, and symmetry. Mark, 38, was a mechanical engineer who worked for a defense contractor in Stamford. He was quiet, methodical, and responsible. The kind of man who woke up at 6:15 a.m. every day, made black coffee with 2 sugars, ironed his shirts himself, and never forgot to take out the trash. He built things for a living, complex systems, machines, designs others didn't understand. And at home, he tried to apply the same structure: order, routine, and protection. Rachel, 35, had once been a rising interior designer in New York City. She had flair, an eye for color, texture, and space. But when their daughter, Emily, was born 9 years ago, she made the decision to step back from her career. She embraced motherhood fully, but over the years, the creative spark in her began to dim. Days became filled with errands, PDA meetings, laundry, and waiting for Mark to come home late from work. To neighbors and friends, they were the ideal family. Mark was respected, Rachel was charming, and their daughter was the picture of grace and politeness. They hosted BBQs in the summer, handed out king-sized candy bars on Halloween, and sent out perfect Christmas cards in coordinated outfits. But inside their picture-perfect home, the silence between Mark and Rachel was growing louder. Their conversations were increasingly logistical about bills, Emily's school, groceries. Intimacy had become infrequent, reduced to habit more than passion. Rachel felt alone, disconnected, like a supporting actress in a life she was no longer leading. Mark, content in his routines, didn't notice the distance, or perhaps he refused to see it. When Rachel looked at him across the dinner table, she didn't see the man who had once made her laugh until she cried. She saw someone reliable, yes, but also predictable, emotionally absent, dull. They had everything two people were supposed to want. But somewhere along the line, they had stopped wanting each other. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a single moment. It was the slow suffocation of a marriage that had become more about structure than soul. And while Mark worked longer hours, tinkering in his garage and solving complex equations at work, Rachel was slipping further away, searching for color in a grayscale life. In that growing space between them, something dark would soon take root. And neither of them saw it coming. Rachel Turner never planned to betray her husband. Not at first. It began with a feeling small and quiet, like a whisper in the back of her mind. A discontent she couldn't name. Most days, it felt like she was watching her own life play out from behind a glass wall. The motions were all there. Wake up, get Emily ready for school, make breakfast, clean the house, fold laundry, scroll through Instagram, cook dinner, smile, repeat. She missed herself, the version of Rachel who once designed downtown lofts and boutique cafes, who wore heels instead of house slippers, who had clients, deadlines, flirtations, ambitions. Now, most of her conversations revolved around homework, grocery lists, or birthday party RSVPs. Mark never noticed her restlessness. Or if he did, he said nothing. He was a man of action, not emotion. If something was broken, he fixed it. But how do you fix the feeling that your life has shrunk into a cage? That feeling intensified one rainy Wednesday afternoon. Rachel sat at a coffee shop with her friend Olivia, a recently divorced real estate agent who had just closed a $1 million deal on a lakeside property. Olivia was glowing: freedom, independence, flirtation with clients. She wore red lipstick and carried herself like the world owed her something. Rachel listened in awe as Olivia described open houses and sleek properties, and something inside her stirred. "You should get back into work," Olivia said. "You're too sharp to waste your days vacuuming cereal out of car seats." Rachel smiled politely, but that night her mind wouldn't stop racing. By the end of the week, Rachel had enrolled in a local real estate seminar. It was harmless, she told herself. Just a chance to meet new people, sharpen some skills. She didn't tell Mark about it until the night before. His reaction was flat. "That's good," he said. barely looking up from his laptop. "You always liked design stuff, and that was it. No questions. No enthusiasm. No curiosity." Rachel felt something snap inside her. Something invisible, but real. The seminar was held at a sleek co-working space in town. It was full of ambitious men and women, and for the first time in years, Rachel felt like someone. Like a professional again. That's where she met Jason Keller. Jason was in his early 40s, tall and athletic, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that studied people like puzzles. He dressed in expensive blazers, drove a black BMW, and spoke with the smooth confidence of a man who always got what he wanted. When he first approached Rachel, it was casual, questions about her background, compliments about her voice, playful jokes about the boring lecturer. But something in the way he looked at her, like he really saw her, lit a fuse Rachel didn't know was there. They went out for coffee after class one day. Then again, and again. Soon, the text started. "Jason, what would you design in a beach house? Glass walls or wraparound porch?" Rachel, "Wraparound. I love warm nights." Jason, "Me too. But I'd need someone to share the porch swing with." She laughed when she read it. She also didn't delete it. At night, Mark would fall asleep early, exhausted from work, while Rachel lay awake, texting Jason under the covers, her heart racing. It was wrong. She knew that, but it also made her feel alive. And then came the first kiss, in the parking lot after the third class, as the sky turned orange and pink behind the rows of real estate signs. Rachel didn't stop him. She kissed him back. That moment, brief, electric, forbidden, changed everything. From that point on, they weren't just friends or classmates. They were something else. Something dangerous. Rachel told herself it was just physical. A harmless escape. She told herself she still loved Mark. But the cracks had already deepened, and what was slipping through wasn't just lust. It was the beginning of a betrayal that would end in blood. Affairs rarely begin with fire, they begin with sparks. Flickers. A subtle glance. A lingering touch. A late-night message that shouldn't be sent, but is. Rachel and Jason's affair grew like ivy. Quiet, persistent, wrapping itself around every corner of her life until it was too thick to ignore. It started innocently enough. Lunch dates under the pretense of real estate training. Quick coffees before school pickups. Meetings that lasted longer than they should have. But within a month, Rachel was lying without hesitation. "I'm meeting Olivia for lunch," she'd say, kissing Mark on the cheek. "She wants me to help her stage a condo downtown." Mark, always buried in spreadsheets and deadlines, nodded absently. Don't be late for Emily's recital. But he had started noticing things. Subtle changes. Rachel had begun wearing perfume again, the floral one he hadn't smelled in years. Her makeup was heavier, her clothes more fitted. She'd upgraded her phone and added a lock screen password. She checked it constantly. She laughed more, but not with him. At first, Mark told himself he was imagining it. After all, Rachel had just started something new. Maybe it was excitement. Maybe it was confidence returning. That should have been a good thing. But the distance between them was growing. At night, when he reached for her, she was either too tired or not feeling well. Her phone never left her side. It buzzed constantly with texts she refused to read aloud. When he asked who it was, her answer was always vague, "Olivia," or "someone from class." The seed of suspicion was planted. And Mark was not a man who ignored problems, especially not ones in his own house. One evening, after Rachel left in a rush for a last-minute staging consult, Mark opened her laptop. She always used it for emails. What he found made his stomach twist. A folder titled Class Notes wasn't filled with spreadsheets or property listings. Contained selfies. Dozens of them. Rachel, smiling, smirking, posing seductively. Some in her closet mirror, others in the passenger seat of a car that wasn't theirs. One even taken in a hotel room. He closed the laptop slowly, like it was a live bomb. He didn't want to believe what he was seeing. But he was a logical man, and logic told him that wives didn't take sultry photos for their female friends. He said nothing that night. Instead, He lay awake beside her, listening to the sound of her breathing, while rage formed in his chest like molten iron. He began watching her more closely. She had a pattern and a fair routine. Every Thursday afternoon, she left for class, her phone battery mysteriously dying soon after. She'd return hours later, flushed, distracted, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his. And then he saw it. A black BMW, parked 2 blocks from their home. Engine off, windows tinted. It was there on 3 separate Thursdays, idling like a predator in waiting. On the 4th Thursday, Mark followed it. The car led him to a boutique hotel just off the interstate. 10 minutes after Rachel walked inside, the man followed. Mark sat in his car, frozen, heart pounding with the dull rhythm of betrayal. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He simply stared at the entrance of that hotel until the sun went down and his wife walked out. Hair tousled, lips slightly swollen, her heels clicking across the pavement like nothing had changed. Something broke in him that night. Not just trust. Something deeper. Something darker. Mark was a man who built things with precision, who lived in the safety of plans and blueprints. But this was chaos. This was war. And what Rachel didn't know, what Jason would never see coming, was that Mark had already begun designing something new. Not with screws or circuits, but with revenge. Mark had always believed in logic, in calm, in structure, but betrayal rewired something inside him. The part that once reasoned had been replaced by a quiet, burning intensity. He wasn't going to confront Rachel. Not yet. He wasn't going to ask her why she did it, or who this man was, or how long it had been going on. Because he already knew. He had names, license plates, dates. He had hotel receipts, printed from their shared email cache. He had Jason Keller's real estate profile, business reviews, even photos of him on Facebook, where he smiled beside homes he sold and women he likely seduced. Mark studied them with a craftsman's precision. The planning began a week later. He created a burner email and posed as a wealthy investor from out of town. He told Jason Keller he was looking to purchase a private luxury property with no neighbors. Something secluded, remote, expensive. Jason responded within hours. "Let's talk. I've got a few listings you'll love." Mark smiled as he typed. "Set up a private showing. The more privacy, the better." They agreed to meet in 2 weeks. That gave Mark time. Time to prepare. He bought tools. Not ones that would raise suspicion. A crowbar, heavy-duty gloves, zip ties, thick plastic sheeting. All easily explained if anyone asked. He rented a storage unit across town under a false name. That's where he practiced, setting up and breaking down scenes quickly. Learning how to silence a scream. How to wrap a body. How to make blood disappear. He didn't think of himself as a killer. Not yet. He was an engineer, a strategist. And what he was building wasn't just vengeance, it was a message. Permanent one. At home, Rachel remained oblivious. She laughed on the phone with Olivia, texted furiously in the bathroom. Her lies were smoother now, like she'd rehearsed them 100 times. But Mark watched her with the silence of a shadow. One night, she left her phone unattended. Mark slipped it from the counter and opened her recent texts with Jason. "Jason, next Thursday. Same room. I can't stop thinking about you. Rachel, I'll bring the red dress. The one you like." He stared at the screen for a long time. That would be the day. Thursday. Rachel left just after noon, pretending to meet Olivia for a design consultation. Mark followed Jason. This time, the destination wasn't the usual hotel. Jason had arranged for a private viewing, an empty lakefront mansion 20 miles outside the city. He wanted to impress his new investor. Mark watched as Jason entered the house and waited. He knew Rachel wouldn't be far behind. And when she arrived, stepping out of her car like a woman on a secret mission, Mark remained still, unseen, just like he'd planned. She kissed Jason before the door even shut behind them. Mark's heart didn't race. He simply slipped out of his car, pulled on his gloves, and entered through the side gate where the lock had been quietly broken hours earlier. Inside, the house was silent. But that silence wouldn't last. Because this house wasn't going to sell. It was going to swallow them. The mansion was quiet, eerily so. No furniture. No soundproofing. Just echoing footsteps and the whisper of betrayal dancing through the air like dust in sunlight. Mark moved like a shadow through the back hallway, every step calculated. He could hear them. Laughter. Muffled voices. A kiss. Jason and Rachel were in the master suite upstairs. The very room Jason had described as perfect for a couple who wants privacy. Mark's hands tightened into fists inside his gloves. He had waited for this moment, visualized it over and over, and now it was real. No turning back. Upstairs, Rachel lay draped in a bedsheet, her lipstick smudged, her phone tossed carelessly on the floor. Jason was shirtless, standing near the balcony, sipping from a bottle of wine he'd brought to celebrate a closing. They never heard the footsteps. Not until it was too late. The door creaked open. Jason turned, expecting maybe a cleaner or another agent. But it wasn't. It was Mark, holding a hammer. His face was calm, eerily calm. Not a word spoken. Jason froze. Who the hell? Crack. The hammer came down before he could finish. Once. Twice. Blood sprayed the white walls like an abstract painting. Jason dropped instantly, screaming, writhing, but Mark didn't stop. He crushed his skull until silence took over. Rachel screamed from the bed, scrambling backward, sheet clutched to her chest, eyes wide with disbelief. Mark! Oh my God! What are you? He turned to her slowly, breathing heavy, blood dripping from the hammer. Did you love him? His voice was hollow, broken. Rachel shook her head violently. No, it wasn't like that. Please. Let's just talk. But it was too late for talking. Too late for excuses. The trust was dead. Buried under hotel receipts and late-night lies. Mark stepped toward her. She bolted off the bed, running barefoot toward the door, but he grabbed her hair from behind and yanked her back hard. So hard she fell and hit her head on the corner of a marble step. There was a thud, a gasp, then silence. Blood pooled beneath her, warm and spreading fast. Mark stood over both of them. His wife and her lover. Broken, still, crumpled like trash left in a house no one wanted. The marble floors were stained now. No open house would fix this. He dropped the hammer. It clanged like a judge's gavel. Judgment had been passed. But Mark wasn't done. He knew what came next. Cover up, clean up, control. He dragged Jason's body into the walk-in closet, laying plastic under it to catch the fluids. Rachel's body he placed back on the bed, propped like she was sleeping, peaceful, almost tragic. He cleaned up fast, efficient, wiped down the banisters, washed the hammer, collected every trace. He set the mansion's alarm to armed from Jason's own key fob and walked out the back door. Gloves still on, heart hollow. The sun was starting to set. Orange bled into crimson, just like the sheets upstairs. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the abandoned mansion. Mark drove in silence, the blood still tacky beneath his nails despite the gloves. His mind was a thunderstorm, but the eye of it, calm and focused. He wasn't going to panic. Not now. Not when everything needed to be perfect. He didn't just want to get away with it. He wanted control over the story that would follow. Step 1. Destroy the link. Mark knew that Jason Keller was supposed to meet a client that day, a wealthy investor interested in a cash purchase. That investor never existed. Just a fake email, a burner number, a digital ghost. He dumped the burner phone into a river on his way home, then tossed the gloves and hammer into a separate dumpster 10 miles away. The clothes he wore, dark, nondescript, were already smoldering in a steel barrel behind a deserted construction site. No CCTV in the area. He had checked. No fingerprints either. Mark had worn 2 pairs of gloves, just in case. Step 2. Craft the alibi. Mark pulled into his driveway at 7:32 p.m. His neighbor was watering his front lawn and gave him a friendly nod. Late night. Had to work on site, Mark replied coolly. Big project downtown. He walked inside to the smell of leftover takeout and silence. He opened his laptop and began sending work emails, backdating drafts so it looked like he'd been working remotely all afternoon. He even called his project manager to touch base and discuss blueprints. Nothing suspicious. Nothing angry. Just another day in the life of an overworked husband. Step 3. Misdirection. By morning, Rachel's sister Olivia would start texting her, then calling. When she got no reply, she'd assume Rachel was too busy with design clients. But by late afternoon, Olivia would get worried. She'd call Mark, and he'd play the part. Concerned, confused, supportive. She told me she was meeting you yesterday. She never came home? God. Do you think something happened? Day 2 missing. By the time the police were called, Mark had already laid a believable foundation. His wife had been distant lately, distracted, even secretive. He feared she was seeing someone. He didn't know who. He didn't want to believe it. But she'd been taking secret calls, sneaking out, hiding messages. When detectives asked if there were any enemies or problems at home, Mark sighed and said, "We were trying to work through things. I still love her." Day 3. Discovery. It didn't take long for someone to find the bodies. The property manager came to show the lakefront mansion to another buyer and was greeted by a broken lock, a foul smell, and blood on the master bedroom carpet. Inside, he found Jason Keller slumped in the closet. Rachel Monroe lay posed on the bed, as if resting. Both dead. Both unmistakable. Mark got the call at 5:48 p.m. He collapsed to his knees, sobbing. The police arrived at his house an hour later, and he played the part flawlessly. A man in mourning, destroyed by the violent murder of his wife. But beneath the tears, the grief, the devastation, Mark watched the officers closely, measured their questions, calculated every word. Because the truth? He wasn't scared of being caught. He was scared of not being believed. Detectives began their investigation. First, Mark appeared calm, too calm. They asked about his marriage. He admitted it had issues. He mentioned he thought Rachel might be having an affair, but didn't know with whom. When they found Jason Keller's body alongside Rachel's, the pieces started coming together. Why were they alone at an unsold mansion? Why no signs of forced entry? And how did Mark know about Jason's listings? Investigators dug into phone records. Rachel had texted Jason frequently. Many messages were deleted, but some remained. They traced a fake buyer account used to schedule the house viewing. It was linked to a burner phone. A nearby gas station had security footage of someone buying that burner phone. A man in a hoodie with Mark's build. No face shown, but suspicions grew. Mark's alibi was thin. Emails were sent late, but not enough metadata to prove he was home. His car's GPS had been wiped. Still, security footage caught a similar car near the mansion the day of the murder. A neighbor remembered Mark returning home unusually late that night. The pieces were not enough for an arrest, but they were adding up. Mark began to unravel. He drank more, lost sleep, avoided calls from Rachel's family. During a second interview with detectives, he slipped up, mentioning a detail about the murder scene that hadn't been released publicly. The room fell silent. The detective's pen stopped moving. That one sentence cracked the case wide open. A search warrant was issued. Inside Mark's garage, police found a hidden bag of Rachel's jewelry, stuff she wore that day. Forensics found traces of blood under his car's matting. Mark was arrested at dawn, charged with double homicide. The neighbors watched in shock as he was led away in handcuffs. Court was packed. Rachel's family sat on one side, Jason's on the other. Prosecutors painted Mark as a jealous husband who snapped. The defense argued he was grieving and framed. But the evidence spoke louder. The hammer, the fake buyer, the phone. It all pointed to Mark. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Guilty. Mark Monroe was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without parole. He never looked up as the judge spoke. Rachel's sister cried. Jason's mother wept. The courtroom was still. Justice had been served.